those of you who have found yourself face down, finishing an armbar, eye to eye with the biggest toenail you have ever seen, have found a new home, guys, welcome to the channel. Do me a favor, reach down there, mash the hell out of that subscribe button. Don't forget to fuel the comments section with absolute ridiculousness, as well as your own personal experiences. Guys, I'm the professor. I'm here with you today to take you on a walk through part 2 of a 3-part series that we started about a week ago, talking about the various types of jiu-jitsu academies there are out there. Today, we're going to focus on the competition academy. Part 1 was the commercial academy. So I hope you guys enjoyed that content. Today, as we get on to the competition aspect of the various types of academies, we're going to talk about the first thing, which is atmosphere. Okay, so one of the first things you need to look at and scope out really quick is the intensity of the academy. Okay, most of the time at these competition level academies, the intensity is super high, meaning every class. Now, I came from a competition based academy. It's a mixture of the latter one we're going to talk about here in a few days, but it was a competition-based academy, and the intensity was unbelievably high. Every single day you went in there, it was about being the best. It was about dominating on the mats and trying to be at the top of the class. That's what it was about every day. And to be perfectly honest with you, you have to be mentally geared for that type of academy. Every single day you pull up to the academy, you're probably going to sit in your car and go, "Ah, Jesus Christ, I don't know if I have this in me today." Okay, and it's a perfectly natural experience. Okay, so it's important for you to understand whether or not this is the type of academy that fits you well. Okay, now, additionally, as we talk about these different types of academies, it's important to understand as well that there can be variances here. There can be some combinations of all of these, and it's important for you to go in there with your eyes wide open, prepared to take a really close look at the academy, the coaches, the staff, and as well as the lineup to know exactly what you're dealing with. The intensity is hard to explain in a competition only oriented academy. Now, we're talking solely competition. The intensity is really super high. Everything is going to be about hard rolls, hard rounds. The focus all the time is going to be about competition. And to be perfectly honest with you, the vast majority of practitioners just cannot survive in this type of an environment, especially when it comes to every single day. Now, I try as best I can not to name any names of any academies or anything, but one of the most overwhelmingly obvious ones is going to be like Danaher's Academy. I'd be willing to bet you step in there. That is a meat grinder, quote unquote meat grinder. You're going to step in there every single day, and it's going to be an absolute beatdown. It's going to be really tough. And that's because these athletes are trying to prepare themselves for competition at the highest levels, and really nothing short of that type of performance on a daily basis is going to produce the kind of results that are necessary to perform at that level. So be aware of the type of academy that you walk into from day one. Okay? And a quick Google search can probably give you an idea of what you're dealing with right there. A second thing to keep in mind is class format. Okay, now this is just my opinion, but as a gym owner myself, I'll tell you that class format means a lot. A lot of times in your class format, there's going to be, as far as competition gyms go, the bulk of the time, I would say probably 70-30, is going to be spent focusing on rolling, okay, or getting your rounds in, and whatever format that is, okay. And you can generally tell if you're in a competition-based academy, because a lot of times they will specifically state their rule set, the rule set that they're abiding by, and generally it's because they're preparing for a particular tournament that has a specific rule set. So it's important to understand that as well. When you walk in there as a day one white belt, you're not going to know anything, okay? And because you don't know anything, you're kind of like a fish out of water, and on top of that, you're drinking from a fire hose, and you're learning all this stuff in a very ultra-competitive environment. And a lot of times, because everybody's so worried about themselves and getting themselves prepared, there's very little time spent catering to the white belt. And it generally becomes survival of the fittest. Okay, now I'm not arguing against competition level academies for white belts, because obviously everybody starts somewhere. Okay, you just need to understand whether the competition aspect is for you or not. There's a lot of people, and I have a lot of people in my academy as well, who are recreationalists. They enjoy doing the art because they just enjoy doing the art, and they have no real desire to step up and try to compete at the highest levels. Now, generally, I always try to tell each one of my students, I would like to see you compete at least a couple times at every single belt level, because that's the best way to go out and confirm your skills. Otherwise, you find yourself having to sort of go in and spend time at other academies judging your skill set and evaluating your skill set. So class format is a really, really big one right here. Now, to give you a loose idea of what it might look like, I would say probably 70-30. Okay, and 70-30 means in favor of rolling or rounds versus the 30% of time spent doing instruction with the actual black belt on the mat or the coach on the mat. So it's important to know that, okay? Rolling. So we talked about, and this kind of goes in part with number 2, with the second point I'm making here on the atmosphere. Rolling. When you start looking at how much time is spent rolling, that is a general indicator about how intense those academies are. Okay, now a lot of commercial academies, they spend a whole lot more time doing instruction and doing technique versus rolling. Now, I have students that come into my academy all the time, and they're like, man, we just never rolled. Okay, and so in my academy, I try to have a little bit more of a balance. I try to be 50-50, because we do have quite a number of individuals who are not interested in competing at the highest levels. So that means, one thing has to kind of be sacrificed for the other in maintaining some sort of a balance. Okay, so a good look at how much time you spend rolling in your academy is probably a very good indicator of exactly what type of a gym that you're in. Okay. The second thing I want to talk about is the professor. The first thing you need to really look at with them is whether they're on the mat or not, and that's a really, really big indicator of exactly what type of an atmosphere you're in. It's also a very big indicator of exactly what may come on down the road in terms of your exposure time with that particular coach. Okay, now some professors watch this may get pissed off at me for saying this or calling attention to the obvious, but look, you're either on the mat or you're not. And in my experience, if you're going to focus on fighting as a black belt and competing as a black belt, it is really, really difficult to balance the time needed to prepare yourself for competition at the highest levels. Let's just use like IBJJF as an example, okay? I know myself, in preparing for a campaign for a return after years off of the competition mats, it took quite an amount of time of training at other locations because I simply didn't have a ton of black belts on the mat. And even if I did, I was not going to get the necessary exposure because they knew my game. So I had to train outside and go to other academies. And generally, you want to train with the best guys in the area. So there's a lot of time spent throughout the week training for myself versus pouring that time into my students. So that's a really, really big indicator. When you start talking about whether the coach is on the mat or not, very, very, very important. So that's a good indicator right there. If you look at it and go, okay, how many days a week is the black belt actually on the mat? And if he's not on the mat, what's the reason for him not being on the mat? In my case, I work another job. I have a full-time job. I have a full-time career in addition to owning an academy. So my students know that if I'm not on the mat, generally it's because either I'm sick, there's some sort of emergency family deal, I have my job that I'm doing. But that's pretty much it. When I did make a run back toward the campaign of fighting, they knew exactly where I was at. And to be honest with you, there was some grumblings about that. So some people, they just don't really take too kindly to that, especially when you're trying to run an academy. They're paying for my presence, and whether I'm on the mat or not, that's a big deal. Okay, so you as the white belt need to take a look at that and go, okay, well, where is the coach? Where's the head coach? Is he on the mat a lot, or is he traveling and training for tournaments on down the line? And in some cases, they're on the circuit and they're actually chasing whatever tournament that is around, and they're spending every weekend competing or week, and they're never really on the mat, and somebody else is coming in and teaching. So it's very, very important there. And to the second point with the professor is if he does compete, how often? Okay, so I feel there's some tolerance that has to be in there. Okay, this art is a proving art, and even as a black belt, to stay on top of the game is very necessary. Going to these tournaments and seeing things, okay, and that's why we talked about having balance. Whether you're a competition academy or not, having some balance and going to the tournaments provides insight as to what the cyclical nature of the art is at that particular point in time. Something new may be on the horizon. Jiu-Jitsu changes dramatically from week to week to week when it comes to adaptation and the evolution of the art. So do they compete? It's not necessarily a bad thing if they compete. I'm not saying that. For you, the student, okay? For them, it's great because they want to continue to further the art for themselves and to bring it back for the academy. But there does generally, if you're talking about exposure to students, have to be some level of balance there, okay? So as a white belt, you can kind of ask yourself, you know, how often does this person compete? Is it a couple times a year? Which I really tend to think is very tolerable, and I think that you should, as a white belt, you should definitely have the expectation that your coach is going to compete here and there. Full time is maybe a different story. And if somebody steps in his place and is a black belt and covers that class, then you really have no room to gripe and complain. Okay, but if they're the only one and you're constantly being stepped down on for them to go and compete, and you're getting the services of a blue or purple belt every single day of the week, and you just never see the guys, they never really spend any time with you. You know, I think that could probably be generally a disagreement or an argument that you may have in your favor as to why you might want to try another academy or visit another academy, okay? Now, you know, loyalties aside, everything can kind of change. If you've had a great experience with your academy for years and all of a sudden your professor comes up and says, you know what, I want to spend the year trying to compete for myself, then, you know, that's going to be up to you whether or not you can tolerate that and whether you want to remain at the academy or not. I'm a very big believer in loyalty. I think if you've established a great reputation with your professor, with your coach, I think it would probably be in your best interest as well as his to remain loyal to your academy and let him go and continue to evolve his skill set. Now, if it's just something from the minute that you've been there a year or two, and the minute that you've been there, the black belt has never been there, and he continues to not be there, well, you know, that's a kind of an idea that you might want to, if that's not what you want, you might want to check another place, okay? So, the ultimate thing right here under Professor tab is to understand that this affects your progression, okay? It affects your time and the attention that you get with your coach, which is very, very important, all right? I firmly believe that a coach should be on the mat to see the progression of his athletes. He should put his athletes first and himself second. I believe that. Anybody that wants to disagree with me, feel free to disagree with me in the comments. It's just a simple perspective. But I do understand that my time away from my students dramatically affects their progression, okay? Because I'm not there to see all the things that they do. I'm not there to see the changes in their game that is being made, and that's very, very important. So keep that in mind as the white belt. You have to ask yourself, you know, how is this gentleman gonna see me move through the ranks? How is he gonna progress me, and how is he gonna see my skill set evolve if he's never here? Okay, so very, very important there. Another one that I like to always mention is going to be open mat days. Now, you know, my opinions on open mats, I have always ran a closed academy. Okay, now there's a reason why I run a closed academy, meaning I don't allow other individuals from other academies to just randomly drop into my academy. There's a number of reasons why, and that's why some people may accuse me of balancing between this, a little bit between all three. I don't care anywhere you go. Every gym is going to have some resemblance of each type of academy in there somewhere or another. But for me, open mat days are not open to outsiders. I do not just open my gym to anybody and allow anybody to come in off the streets. The largest reason there is because of protection. It's just not something that I like to do, is expose my athletes to just any random person passing through, because you just never know. Number one, I would never just open my front door and allow anybody to walk in off the street and sit at my dinner table and eat dinner with my family. I consider my academy my family, and in that same regard, I will not open the doors to my academy and just randomly let anybody walk in off the streets to sit and be in our home. So that's just a preference there. But you need to look at that outside. Now, most of the time, competition-based academies, they are completely open, and it's going to be it's generally going to be pretty much a meat grinder on those open mat days, and they have people coming from all around. Okay, one of the local gyms here in this area that everybody generally tends to go to on open mats when they're preparing for tournaments is widely known, and just about every black belt in the area goes to that same place to prepare themselves for competition, and that's kind of what I'm getting at here. A second thing you want to ask on your open mat days, generally every academy has it, is what is the format? Is the format one of progression, meaning is there somebody on the mat officially designated to assist in the younger people or the people who are newer in the art, for lack of a better term, in the infancy of the art? Is there something in place to help those people on open mat days work on things of their own, or is it just geared at get in there, set to kill, roll, and get ready for the next tournament? That will be very obvious when you walk in there. There will be very little structure generally, other than a person on the mat going, all right, next round, 5 minutes, ready, touch up, go, or something to that effect. Okay, so something to keep in mind there. Some questions that I want you to ask yourself throughout this series, and you know, obviously when you're going about your normal days in your academies and what you do is do you fit in here? That's a very big thing, and I know a lot of people start their jiu-jitsu career and they never really fully answer that question for themselves. Do they fit in? They always feel sort of out of place. I generally feel like there is a place for everybody. Now, it may not be readily accessible to you. The place you may have felt the best might have been across town or in another town for that matter. But what I would highly suggest, I'd be highly suggested that you do, is reach out to various academies when you're getting started and go in and attend a free class. They generally all offer that, and assess the environment and ask yourself, do I feel like I fit in here? That's one of the most important things. Is the atmosphere inviting for me and whatever my interests are at the time, whether that be tournament, whether it be just, you know, fellowship. There's all different types of things that are available from that a Jiu-Jitsu Academy offers, and those are things that you need to ask yourself. You know, another question is, I would say, is what's your level of involvement? What do you want to contribute to the gym that you attend there? And what is your intention with the gym? Very, very important things that you should ask, because if you go in there and just go, you know, I just want to get in shape, just want to do this, just want to do that. These are situations where I've seen older folks, let's say somebody my age or a little bit older, somebody who's a little longer in the tooth, go into a gym and they've heard that jiu-jitsu is a great workout. And unfortunately, they walk into a competition level gym where there's a bunch of young folks and it is an absolute meat grinder, and they go in the very first week, they are seriously injured. Believe it or not, it does happen, and it could have been avoided. It could have been avoided if there are some protective measures in place by the coaches that sort of insulate those people who are really only interested in that particular level of involvement with jiu-jitsu. If those insulators had been built in to help let that person progress through the art. And this is where I suggest balance in terms of academies. Okay, so something that you should be looking for is that balance, and it should be necessary that it be included in there. And again, another thing that you should ask the question is, does it seem like this academy is exclusive of recreationalists or hobbyists in the art of jiu-jitsu? Because whether you want to agree with it or not, or whether you think it should be a part of it or not, there are hobbyists. And I make this distinction to some of my students all the time. There are tradesmen and there are hobbyists, okay? And then there are professionals. So there's people of all different interests in every academy, and I firmly believe that if you're really progressive and you're trying to run the best academy you can possibly run, you can have a good balance of all of them. Unfortunately, some academies focus on one end of the spectrum or the other, and some people find themselves unfortunately caught in the middle, and they cannot get out. It's a hopeless vacuum, and they cannot fix it other than just by leaving. And by that time, a lot of times they've already developed some pretty good friendships within the academy. So this is the last thing that we want to see as well. Another question I want you to ask yourself is, competition the sole focus? Is everything that is spoken about, is everything that happens in there generally tied back into the competition element? That's another good question you can ask yourself. Does the gym generally tend to focus on all things competition, or are there moments where it's about fellowship, or there's moments where it's about specific technique or about evolution? Is there any philosophy in there? Believe it or not, jiu-jitsu professors are all across the board. Throw a dart. We're a bunch of weird asses. It's a part of the game. You get that. It's just the nature of it. So expect that going in, that everybody, all of us have our quirks. We're human beings at the core. So some of that you have to look at your coach and you got to go, okay, this is a guy I can tolerate for the next 10 years because it's about the average time that it takes to get to black belt. So you need to ask yourself, is that the only focus, and is this the only thing that they really are looking at doing here? One of the final questions I would ask myself is there balance? By balance, I mean, Is there some maybe discussion about competition? Is there maybe discussion about some of the things that's recently happened in local news? Is there discussions about personal things? You know, people talking about, hey, you know, this is going on in my life. My kid's sick, blah, 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 blah. I mean, these are all normal conversations that generally tend to happen there. And the other thing to ask is there good, healthy relationships being generated on the gym? Is there any level of toxicity present? Okay, now one thing that I would highly suggest that you pay close attention to is toxicity and cliquishness. We're going to get into this in the part 3 of the series, which I think will honestly be probably one of the most intriguing for most people, because I think this is the thing that part 3 we get accused of the most, and I am most consciously trying to avoid. So what level of toxicity is there? How pure are the relationships that are in there? And are those relationships productive? Are they going to be good relationships that help the person navigate the martial art and go out and use the martial arts to better their lives? Okay, so those are good things to ask yourself. It can't all be about competition. Now, some gyms, I guess it can be, but in order for there to be, I think, a healthy balance, you have to have some of everything in there, okay? And sometimes you just find that some gyms they just really slant toward one way or the other, so something to keep in mind. Last thing I want to talk to you about is day 1. Now, day 1 is probably your most important time when you walk into a jiu-jitsu academy. I'm going to tell you exactly how it should go. I'm going to tell you how it could go, and I'm going to tell you how it probably will go. How it should go is you walk in, the atmosphere is electric. It's a good, positive atmosphere. There is some structure, and when you start looking at the way things are set up, there should be a repetitive structure in progress throughout the course of the week. It should be something that continues to come back every single week. It shouldn't just be throw a dart, this day it's here, that day it's there, okay? So keep that in mind. There should be some level of curriculum for a new person that comes in day 1. There should be something in place that helps you to feel like you're really not necessarily just continually drinking from a fire hose. Trust me, that overwhelming feeling, it sucks, it's not fun. Expect there to be some sort of program devised to help the white belts that come in there day 1, okay? I don't think it's too much to ask that there be people in place to ensure that when the time comes to roll, that you have somebody there to help assist you. Now, in my academy, we do something very important, and I personally think it's one of the most important things that we've developed in my academy, and it's called a coach roll system, okay? So when it comes time to get our rolling in, which just rewind the video back and remember I said we're 50-50 academy, and we try to focus on 50% rolling, 50% technique. When it comes time to roll, my people already pretty much know that the advanced belts, your first roll is to get that white belt roll out of the way. We do that so that we avoid having all the white belts sitting over in the corner, not involved, not a part of the game. And the blue belts and the purple belts and all the guys that are higher, they go over and they do what's called a coach roll. Now, that coach roll is exactly what it sounds like. It's a coach roll. It's not about being competitive with a white belt. It's not about trying to rip them from limb to limb. It's about going in and exposing them to as many positions as we can possibly expose them to, okay? So I would ideally like to tell you that should exist within every academy, although I know it probably doesn't. In fact, a lot of academies have some things in place that prevent you from rolling for the first 6 to 8 weeks, which I'm vehemently against. I don't think that's really conducive to your progress whatsoever. I think it sets you back 8 weeks, but some places do that. That's just something I disagree with. So you need to look at that there, and that would be the first thing you do day 1, and I'm talking day 1 as in your trial class. See how the white belts are treated there. Is there some focus on them? In my academy, we understand that is the blood of the next generation coming through there, and it's all about retention rates. If we can't keep them, we don't ensure that there's a new generation coming up behind them, okay? So, keep those things keep those things, close to your mind. So, guys, these are just a few things I want you to keep in mind. I didn't really want to run over about 30 minutes with this video. I wanted to keep it about the same length as the last one. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button. Make sure that you share this with anybody that you know that's going through the art or that's thinking about starting up jiu-jitsu as a hobby or maybe even a recreation, or maybe they're looking at doing it as a professional. So keep all these things in mind. Be on the lookout for part 3. It'll be coming up soon. I want to thank you so much for stepping in with me and taking the time. Guys, the channel is growing. We're doing a lot of big things here. Expect a lot of curriculum to come out of this. Really putting a lot of time into trying to develop this channel and keep it flowing. Now, on the other side of things, you probably noticed that we have some police reviews. You guys know I'm a police officer as well. I'd like to take some time to pour my experiences out to you. This channel will eventually get somewhat comical as you start to learn the real side of me and things don't become quite so business, but I'm still learning here. I'm still trying to get better at the video editing. I hope you enjoy the content. Feel free to leave me suggestions on things that you would like to see, how it can get better, and stick with us, guys. Like and subscribe. Have a great day. Much love and respect.